Hi, hello all, and thank everyone so much for joining us tonight. This is our fifth community meeting in response to the COVID-19 crisis. In previous weeks, we have discussed what our community and local government can do to ensure that we come out of this crisis strong. We have heard from our community members who don't know how they will pay for essentials because of being laid off and because of business closures. We've heard from family members of inmates in the McLean County Jail who worry about the safety and health of their loved ones, many of whom have not been convicted of a crime at all. We have also heard from professionals in social services about the inadequacy of our existing shelter network to ensure that people without homes can safely shelter in place during this pandemic. Last week, we gained the commitment of Bloomington Ward 7 Council member Scott Black to not only approve direct aid spending, but also to help those hurt first and worst. But to help us secure the fifth vote on the council to gain the majority we need to approve direct aid spending. In part 4, we reported on the confirmed cases by race. At that time, our Black neighbors accounted for 37% of the 54 reported cases where race had been known. This week, the trend continues with Black folks, continuing to make up a disproportionate number of the people who have been confirmed to have contracted the virus. Only 8% of our county's population is Black. So this confirms what many of us have worried about, that the impact of coronavirus will worsen existing inequalities in our community. The McLean County Health Department on Tuesday reported 14 more with confirmed COVID-19 tests, the highest one-day increase to date. As of today, 82 of COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in McLean County. Of those 82 individuals, 17 are isolating at home, 4 have been hospitalized, 59 have recovered, and 2 people from our community have died of coronavirus. Before we start, we do have to go over some ground rules for how we'll be operating tonight. The first rule, only assigned speakers will be allowed to speak, but we will open the floor for comments and questions at various points throughout the meeting through the chat function, which you can find in your above right. If the moderator selects your question or comment to be shared out loud, you will be temporarily unmuted by them. If we do not get to your question or comment, use the sign-up form and we will follow up with you after the meeting. We will also be sharing various links throughout the chat, so please keep a lookout. So before I get to the speakers who will present, I'd like to give you a quick update about myself and what has been developing from me. My name is Candace, and my job is currently back in business. I do work at a restaurant. However, there are still so many barriers for essential workers to be able to return safely to work. One of those situations is, like so many other places out here, there are people who need to work regardless of the pandemic that is at hand. And I personally know several folks in the community who are residents, and the stimulus check, because of the stipulations, means that they will get nothing. And these are the people that need to be back at work immediately. They're not going to have any money coming in whatsoever. And these are the folks that I speak out and fight for. So it is helpful for me to have the option to get my income back, but there are still some challenges that I face during this COVID crisis, and they present a struggle and a barrier in my life right now. So childcare, as you know, is currently closed. I don't have much of an alternative option to have my children be watched while I return to work. So, which leaves me with the option of having my mother, who is immune compromised, come in, watch my children, as I go out and possibly contract or not contract the virus every day. My mother also cares for my elderly grandmother, who is definitely one of the people that would be highly affected during this crisis. So at this point in time, that risk is not an option for me, which leaves me in the same place that I was before. Now, I highly appreciate the support that you all in the community have offered. And I know I'm not the only one facing these challenges. So let's keep united and talking action so that everyone is supported and cared for in our community. With that said, tonight we will be hearing about 3 most urgent needs. First, Joe will update us with the news from the community. We will also hear updates from our campaign to decarcerate the McLean County Jail from Olivia of Black Lives Matter in Bloomington-Normal. We will then hear of progress on housing campaign from Radiance Campbell from the People's COVID-19 Community Response Team. We will then hear from County Board Member George Gordon, followed by an update on progress made on the Bloomington City Council for Direct Aid from Ward 8, Bloomington City Council Member Jeff Craybill. After we've heard from each of our action teams, we'll talk about what you can do over the next week, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Olivia to begin talking about decarceration. Olivia?
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Butts and I'm with Black Lives Matter Bloomington-Normal, and I want to give a quick update about kind of the condition at the McLean County Jail. So I've been in touch with some folks this week who are inmates at the McLean County Jail, and I wanted to kind of tell you what they told me and just relay it. So obviously morale is quite low right now. If you've seen the WGLT article that was posted, I think it was this morning, Sheriff Sandage said that inmates are on lockdown 23 hours a day, which means they're only out for about 1 hour to maybe make a phone call, have a stretch, or even take a shower. So unfortunately, morale is not super great there. People are a little bit nervous about if and when COVID-19 gets into the jail. If you visit the jail, even on the outside, you can see some signs in the windows that say help us, or just have notes to the outside world about what's going on in there. As a reminder, we don't believe that isolation is an adequate response to this crisis. The answer that we are suggesting is decarceration. I also was told a little bit about the food. Food and how they serve food obviously has changed due to the crisis, but inmates are often eating bagged lunches and bagged dinners. So I've heard that they are eating maybe multiple times a day. They're eating a bagged lunch, or they might have a bologna sandwich for dinner multiple days in a row. And then the last thing I also wanted to talk about were the fees for video and phone calls. We know that it costs $7.50 for a 30-minute video chat and 25 cents per minute to talk on the phone. This can add up to over $300 per month just to stay in contact with someone that you love during this time, because we know that in-person visitations have been shut down. So we're hoping that the county board or the sheriff step up to waive these fees, but we've realized that we cannot wait. So we're excited to announce that Black Lives Matter here in Bloomington-Normal is going to be providing money to folks to pay for these video visits and phone calls to their loved ones at the McLean County Jail. So we're actually going to drop a link in the chat. We're starting a fundraiser to raise some money for people to cover the cost of their video visits. We've had people reach out to us, both who want to donate to help people stay in contact with their loved ones, and people who need help. So we're going to be putting some money on people's ICS solution systems, which basically is the system you use to contact people at the jail, and making sure that they're able to video chat with their loved ones. So we'd really appreciate it if you would share both the fundraiser and the idea that we are covering costs for people, and let them know to reach out to Black Lives Matter Bloomington-Normal on our Facebook page, and we will figure out a way to get some money on their account so they can talk to their loved ones in the jail. I want to reiterate that this is not a solution, right? We're doing what we can now to take care of our friends and neighbors as they struggle to pay the bills to talk to people in the jail, but we need the county or the sheriff's department or both to step up and take care of these fees and waive these fees during this time. There's no reason that you should be in addition to maybe losing your job or paying your rent, you should be paying $300 just to be able to talk to somebody that you love in the jail. So I'm also excited that we have George Gordon on the call, and we'll be talking to him in a few minutes to get his take on the situation as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Radiance, who's going to give an update on housing.
Hey everybody. So when we first had our call on the COVID-19 crisis 5 weeks ago, we outlined a set of needs that we wanted addressed in a comprehensive community-wide plan. Since that time, we have seen action by the federal government and state government, but we are still waiting for coordinated action by McLean County, the city of Bloomington, and the town of Normal. We learned last week that the city and county governments of Peoria came together with the local hospitals and the continuum of care to develop a hotel solution to meet the needs of 3 populations during the pandemic. The first one being individuals who are symptomatic and require isolation, but who are unable to isolate properly in their current living environment. The second being individuals who are asymptomatic, but who require quarantining because they have been exposed. And the third being individuals who live in congregate living situations and are at high risk for negative outcomes from COVID, such as individuals who currently live in shelters. Now, this is exactly the kind of plan we've been asking our leaders to enact for the last month. We believe that Bloomington-Normal has equal capability and obligation to keep our community safe during this challenging time. Earlier this week, we sent another letter to our elected officials emphasizing the urgency for developing a plan for our community. At their meeting last night, the McLean County Board Executive Committee addressed some of those demands, so we want to take a moment to summarize some of that meeting for you. From the meeting, we have some good news. Chairman John McIntyre shared that the county has 3 alternative housing sites designated, and they have had these sites designated for about 3 weeks. One is a hotel site for first responders, another is a hotel for quarantined individuals, and the third is a school for if further need arises, but none of these are being used at this time. PATH's Executive Director, Karen Zangerly, also spoke at the meeting, and she shared that PATH is currently well funded and prepared for some of the need we are anticipating. However, we still have some concerns about our most vulnerable community members falling through the cracks. Presently, the county board's position seems to be that 1, we do not have a need at this time, and 2, that we can direct responsibility to others like nonprofit support or federal stimulus checks if a need does arise. For 1, nonprofit organizations are not accountable to the people like the government is, and we do not believe that they should be shouldering the burden of the pandemic. Additionally, we are concerned about alternative housing for populations unaddressed at the executive committee meeting last night. People who do not fall under the definition of homelessness, but who are housing insecure or unsafe or who are in unsafe housing nonetheless. This includes people who couch surf, individuals who live in high density housing, those who require isolation but are unable to in their current living environment, etc., etc. For the last several weeks, we have heard from local social service workers and individuals in precarious housing arrangements. They've talked about how difficult it is for many members of our community to follow Governor Pritzker's shelter-in-place order. They've shared that local shelters do not allow for adequate social distancing. Additionally, we know that quarantining with a COVID-positive family member places the whole family at risk, and being asked to stay home with a violent partner places many victims of domestic violence at risk. So we are asking our elected officials to include these members of our community in a comprehensive alternative housing plan. Some of the things we heard at the McLean County Board Executive Committee meeting last night should give us hope. We should celebrate that PATH is currently well funded and that hotels have been identified as potential alternative housing sites. But as we continue moving forward amidst the pandemic, we assert that the public has a right to be informed about the plans of our electeds. We believe that everyday people like you and me should be involved in the decision-making process. We share Executive Director of PATH's concern that we have more people in our community who need help but who do not know where to turn. With a coordinated public response on the part of our elected officials, we can make sure that no one in our community falls through the cracks. Now is the time to put the pressure on. Bloomington-Normal must have a plan in place before the pandemic completely overwhelms our already strained community services. So we're asking you to let our electeds know that you're watching, waiting, and that you expect more from them. Point to Peoria as an example and let them know that you've been attending these weekly community calls. We are going to drop a link in the chat in a few moments. This link will have all of the emails you need to reach out to electeds, as well as some talking points on what you can share with them. Now, will you send a yes in the chat if you're willing to commit to reach out to your elected officials about securing safe housing for our community members in need? Awesome. Thanks, guys. I can see those rolling in. Great. So we'll also be posting that link in the event page on Facebook for you to access after this call is over. For now, I'm going to turn it back over to Olivia.
Okay, so like I mentioned before, we have George Gordon, who sits on the McLean County Board and is also the chair of the County Justice Committee. So George, can you hear us? And let's just make sure we can all hear you.
Yes, I can hear you, and I think I have I've unmuted. I don't see a picture of me, but that's not as important as your being able to see me.
Okay. Perfect. So George, we'll have about 6 questions for you, and then we'll give you 3 minutes for a public statement, and feel free to take as much time of that as you would like.
Okay, thank you.
So first, can you explain a little bit about how the county has reduced the jail population?
Well, in the first place, it's been something of a collaborative effort within county government. The sheriff gets a lot of attention, but in this case, particularly under the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been efforts made not only to release prisoners who are not substantial threats to the community's safety, but also to make a difference in terms of the numbers of people being committed to the jail, and that has been a collaborative effort involving, in particular, the state's attorney's office, the public defender's office, and perhaps most important, and this is frequently overlooked, the courts. No one is committed to any jail without a court order, and it is a matter of law that judges need to be involved in decisions to release inmates under all ordinary circumstances and some not so ordinary, including this. So that there's been an effort to reduce the jail population from 2 directions. One, releasing inmates who are already there and making some difference in terms of the numbers of potential new inmates who would be committed but who have not been. The numbers, as I understand them, are the count several weeks ago was 200, between 200 and 215 in the jail. The numbers are now more in the range of 140 to 150. And the information that I have and the information that the county board has from various offices that I've mentioned in county government, the information is that those remaining have been convicted of particularly significant crimes up to and including murder, major drug convictions, and so on. Others not in those categories have been released, or prosecution has been at the very least postponed. There have been some sentences that involved so-called, I'm looking for the right phrase here, indeterminate convictions. Those who have been convicted and then have to be in jail and then released, and back in jail and then released. Those folks have been released, and the understanding that I have, and I think this is accurate, is that there has been a very strong and conscious effort to pursue those courses of action to make certain that those in the jail, those still incarcerated, are frankly not safe to the community to release.
Okay, thank you for that update. Can you tell us a little bit about if the sheriff has provided a plan on how he's going to make sure that the residents of the jail are separated, and how people that show symptoms will be tested and treated once COVID-19 is in the jail? We all have heard about the 23-hour lockdown mandate, but is there any other plans that have been shared with you coming directly from the sheriff?
Well, the detailed plans, no, we have not received those. We know that the capacity of the jail for isolation, which is not ideal, the capacity is greater because the numbers are down. The sheriff operates under the same state law that everybody else does, and that is that elected countywide officials, the sheriff, state's attorney, circuit clerk, and so on, those individual elected countywide officials under state law have virtually total control of their own offices, so that management details are normally not shared. We are obviously interested, and certainly the sheriff is aware of the interest, and the clear indication has been that while isolation seems to be, for better or for worse, the best way to go, that has been pursued. Staff people are at risk as well, and there is a good deal of taking of temperatures and so forth anytime someone goes in or out of the jail, so that there is a consistent and conscious effort to minimize the risks to all concerned, because when staff members go home from their shift, they're going home to their family, and they have stakes that are very high in this, and I think that is reflected in their concern for the well-being of the inmates as well.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, will the contract that the McLean County Board has with the video conference system allow the sheriff to waive the sheriff or the county to waive the calls, the video charges, until in-person visits are allowed again?
I've asked that question, and others have as well. My understanding is that the fees are contractually set. And if the county were to go into the business, which would be difficult even if we could, if the county were to get into the business of waiving the fees, the vendors might turn around and say, oh, really? And they would walk away from the contract so that there would be no video conferencing at all. That is a concern on the part of people who have looked at this from the county's side of it. Now, whether the county board would be willing to develop some funding sources, develop some funding to help cover the costs, that needs to be looked at, and I would be willing to do that for sure.
Okay.
Whether that is possible, that's going to depend on the will of a majority of 20 members.
Okay, so I would also just mention too that we do know that ICS Solutions waived the video chats for like the first week that in-person video or in-person meetings were eliminated, like the first week that we had shutdowns due to COVID. So I think there is a possibility that the Sheriff's Office or ICS Solutions could come to some type of agreement to
Olivia, let me ask, was that done in McLean County? It
was, yes. Okay. We have someone that we contacted who had 3 waived video visits the first week that everything was shut down here.
All right. I will follow up on that and find out more about that and see what else might be possible and see who else I might be able to bring along on the county board.
Awesome. Thank you, George. We appreciate your commitment to trying to get these fees waived during this time. I'm going to turn it over to Cecilia, who has a couple questions for you about housing.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, George.
Good evening, Cecilia.
Before I start, I just want to say we're kind of on a tight agenda. So just to keep your responses to the questions that I'm going to ask concise.
Sure.
But I've got 3 for you today about housing.
All right.
So like you heard earlier, we believe no one in our community should be without individual housing options where they can shelter in place away from other people during this pandemic, including those who are housing insecure or homeless. Will you commit to making sure that no one is without safe housing?
I will commit to making every effort that I can, because being able to shelter in place is a key, as we've already seen in places where the curve is starting to flatten out. Yes, I will commit to that.
And like you heard earlier as well, we've seen Peoria come up with a coordinated plan between their county board, their city council, their homeless continuum of care, hospitals, health department, and hotels. And they've made that plan public to keep people informed. Will you work towards bringing people together to coordinate an alternative housing plan and share that publicly?
My understanding is that such a plan already exists, and I will try to find out if what the limitations are as far as publicizing, so that the community is aware that it is underway. Was it Candace earlier? No, it was Radiance who mentioned earlier that at the County Board Executive Committee meeting there was reference to alternative housing sites. I do think it's important, particularly for the potential most likely constituencies within the community, but also the community at large, being aware that this is in place, that there has been movement, because I think it's important that people know.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned earlier too that there are populations that are not included in that alternative housing plan, at least that were based off of the executive committee's report last night. So yeah. Our last question is, will you continue to work with us to make all of this happen?
I'm certainly on board in an effort to protect as many people as possible in the community, coming from all directions.
Okay. Thank you, George. Now you have 3 minutes if you'd like to make a public statement.
I think it is very important that the community be made aware, as I've just said, in response to your questions. I also think it's important for elected officials to be aware that there are citizens across the spectrum who have concerns about the health and safety of everyone in the community. There are places, there are times where information sharing is a little bit sensitive because of internal operations and so on, but I am interested in trying to work across all the boundaries that we think exist among ourselves. Citizens, elected officials, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, take your pick. Green Party, I'll stop there. But I would like to contribute to a community-wide effort that will result in the greatest possible maximizing of health and safety and lives for everyone in McLean County, no matter where it is that they live, or in some cases where they don't live because they don't have shelter, they don't have a roof over their heads. And I'm certainly willing to work with that, and it goes beyond that. I am interested in doing so, so that McLean County can be, in this respect, a leader, as in some other respects we are seen as a leader statewide.
Thanks, George. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And we're gonna now hear from Jeff Craybill on direct aid.
Thanks, Cecilia. I really appreciate the words that George said, and as was stated before, I am a Bloomington City Council member, and I see my main role as helping the most vulnerable in our community. This is a time when the city needs to act decisively to help the people impacted by COVID-19. And I just want to say I appreciate the support I've received on council from the groups that are part of this COVID-19 organizing team: Black Lives Matter, Democratic Socialists of America, and Illinois People's Action. Now, the city hasn't been sitting on its hands. They're doing a good job of providing essential services. They're doing a good job with regard to how they treat their employees, with regard, not laying anybody off, providing sick pay. They've stopped water shutoffs, and they've created a resource guide to help residents find aid. But what we also know is that in the great need there is out there for direct aid. In March alone, 5,000 people in McLean County filed for unemployment benefits. That's compared to 500 last year. We also know that not everyone's going to get a stimulus check, or some might have to wait for months. And the stimulus check, in essence, provides benefits for people living on minimum wage for a month. What happens after that? We also heard that unemployment offices are overwhelmed with requests for benefits. And if you think about it, there's a whole new set of people that haven't had to rely on outside assistance that need to have that assistance now. One of the ways I think that the city can do this is through Bloomington Township. Now, the township provides direct aid and emergency assistance to those residents that need funds for housing, food, and utilities. We know that our township has seen an increase in requests for aid based on COVID-19. Unfortunately, the typical requirements for township aid are pretty strict with regard to requirements for assets, income, and there's a lot of forms you have to complete. And also the amount of aid is limited to somewhere near $300 a month, which certainly isn't sufficient for what people need right now. Since we started these meetings 4 months ago, there's been movement on City Council to provide direct aid. If you've listened to these calls, the mayor, Terry Runner, has listed his support. From the beginning, you've had the support of myself and Alderwoman Jen Carrillo. We've had Alderman Scott Black and Alderwoman Julie Emig also agree that aid is important for the city to provide. We've also discussed this direct aid with city staff. And just today, I submitted what's called an aldermanic request to have this direct aid discussion put on the agenda for the Monday meeting on April 20th. Now, the purpose of that would be to have a discussion, and the goal would be to get a majority of council members at the April 20th meeting to then put the direct aid on the agenda for the meeting on the April 27th. So what will direct aid look like? Julie Emig, Jen, and myself have been working with the township supervisor, Deb Skilrud, to help create guiding principles and eligibility requirements, or what they could be. The guiding principles: people know best how to spend their money. Eligibility should focus on helping as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And COVID-19 direct aid should be a grant or otherwise be separate from other funds of the township. There should be minimal eligibility requirements. We're talking about show that you live in Bloomington, show that you lost your job, show how much your rent is. Those basic things are all really that should be needed to provide this direct aid. I believe it's our role as a city to provide people aid in these emergency times, and we have the funds to do so. Now, some people say it's not our role, that we can rely on the United Way. Now, the United Way is doing great work in our community right now. But if you look at it this way, Bill Gates is donating money to COVID-19, yet the federal government is still providing aid. You have Governor Pritzker providing his personal funds to help COVID-19, yet the state is still providing aid. And we should do that as a city. That is our responsibility, just as much as essential services are our responsibility. Many other cities are doing the same thing. You can talk about Elks Grove up in northern Illinois. We can talk about rental assistance being provided by a city out in Washington state, even Minneapolis, Minnesota, providing aid to its citizens. And so what can you do? I want to thank everyone. We've received a lot of public comment before our meeting this past Monday. And Robert Garcia spoke in person and really gave an impassioned plea for this type of aid. And he connected it to the aid that he is seeing, the need that he is seeing in the community. And so I would suggest that you continue to express your need to myself and other council members, whether it's in the form of a handwritten public comment or actually coming on live to the meeting. So either of those options are good, but we are listening, we are building support, and we hope to have something soon for the people in the community. Thanks. And I'll turn it over to Joel to talk about actions and questions and answers.
Thank you, Jeff. Exactly, and thanks so much for that report. I think from here, it's so important for us to take note of where we're going to take this. And so I just want to drive you to this link. It will be in your chat in a moment as well, but that's protectourpeople.com/direct-aid. We are asking you to reach out to your elected officials, reach out to people like Jeff, that we know we have his support, reach out to his colleagues and let them know what you would like to see the city of Bloomington do. And so I'm going to open chat up, and if I can just get really quick, if you can commit to reaching out to your elected officials and telling them what you want to see happen from your elected officials. Can you put a yes in chat, please? Thank you so much, everybody. This is really what makes the difference. Now, I know we've had a few different action steps that we've covered throughout this meeting, so I want to go back through those and take a moment to make sure that we don't forget anything. So first and foremost, before we move on, I want to make sure that we are going to have you with us next week. And so if it's not live right now, within a few minutes, protectourpeople.com is going to link you straight to the Facebook event for next week's meeting so that you can, and it's live. I just got the go ahead. So go to protectourpeople.com. I'm going to actually ask you, if you're on your computer, if you're on your phone, go there right now. Say that you are coming next week. And whether you do this right now or after we finish our call, make sure that you invite your friends. There's a share button, use it. Invite people, particularly invite people that you know are invested and interested in this community work that's being done, and make sure that they know about it. Again, that is protectourpeople.com. Then, if you want to support our decarceration movement, if you want to support Olivia and the work that Black Lives Matter is doing, please donate to that fundraiser. Again, they're going to be supporting people who currently cannot afford video and phone calls, who don't have any other options because they can't go visit their loved ones in the jail for free. And so if you'd like to support that, then please hit protectourpeople.com/donate, and that will take you right to the GoFundMe page where you can give whatever you're able to support that good cause. And then we're not just asking you to reach out about direct aid. We're also asking you to reach out about housing. There's so much going on. And so if you want to see that specific resource, protectourpeople.com/housing will give you everything that you need to reach out, that contact information, and some reminders of what we're asking for. And then one more time, protectourpeople.com/direct-aid for the action guide on how to reach out to your elected officials and ask for the direct aid that our community deserves. I'm going to leave this up for just a moment. There's all of the links. Make sure, write those down if you need to. But /donate/direct-aid and /housing. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to now move into our Q&A section before we hear from Reverend Black to close us out. So we've got about 5 to 7 minutes for question and answer. If you've got a question that you'd like to pose to one of our panelists tonight, go ahead and drop it in the chat box. We'll be looking through panelists. If you've seen any questions come up, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and respond to them. So one person shared, this is from Zach, that we do have the McLean County COVID-19 testing site at 1106 Interstate Drive in Bloomington, Illinois. So that's just a reminder that if you need to get tested, if you know somebody who needs to get tested, you can get tested. And so take advantage of that testing site. We're lucky to have one that's so close to home, just outside of kind of Bloomington proper. It looks like they're doing up to 250 tests a day. So go get tested if you need to get tested. I know somebody just said, did anybody see my question? Please excuse us as we scroll through and look at for those questions in chat. From Elizabeth Kosuth, she asks, is there any organization collecting funds to help support undocumented immigrants? Panelists, does anybody know of anything in our community or maybe more broadly for people who want to support undocumented people?
This is Jeff. I'm not aware of anything at the moment. It's probably, I think a couple of people are mentioning the immigration project, and I know they're working on those type of people because that's the group that they represent. So they are looking at that. And Joel, I saw another question that I can probably answer.
Go for it, Jeff.
I think it was Kevin Woodard asked about what could be done about, in essence, vape stores, and so unfortunately, and this is how it was explained to me, is that, and maybe this was discussed at the council meeting on Monday, but they are not considered an essential business, and what they're saying is that the city's hands are kind of tied because unless the county says that, unless the state says they're an essential service, then we can't allow them to open, and so it's probably something maybe to bring up with the state. But that's the information I have on that. Not a great answer, but that's what I have.
Thank you for sharing, Jeff. We had another question from Terry Thede. Terry, if you're able, I'm going to unmute you so that you can share your question about ISU students from out of the country.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I coordinate the food logistics for the School Street Food Pantry, and we received some donations from the Office of Residential Life there, and that person shared with me that there are multiple students who are having a hard time going home to their countries, even though they'd like to, because they're unable to get a coronavirus test because they